Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the D-Shift podcast. And I am happy to be talking all things retirement, Social Security, and planning for your future as you go through divorce, or if you've been widowed, or even if you are single and are not interested in getting into a new relationship, but you still want to plan for your retirement. So I have a real expert here to talk to us today. Eric Blake is a certified financial planner, and he's the founder of Blake Wealth Management. He specializes in helping women 55 plus to navigate retirement with clarity and confidence. And Eric offers 25 years experience in this field. I had the privilege of being on Eric's podcast, and now he's coming on mine, which I think is always a great way to spread the message, because retirement is a big concern, especially if you're going through that gray divorce phase. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on your podcast. And again, thank you for being on mine.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. I love these conversations, especially when we've talked a few times. It just, we just are able to get a little bit deeper into this subject. So
Absolutely.
Eric, before we go into the meat and potatoes of the episode, can you share a little bit about why this is your area of focus and passion and expertise?
Well, as they say, all great things start with your own story, right? So I love the opportunity to share my background and how I got into this. I was raised by a single mother to start. So I actually never knew my biological father. So they got divorced before I was 2 years old. And he never made an effort to be part of my life, which was okay. But that also meant that my grandparents were huge parts of my growing up. And the man I actually called daddy was my grandfather. Because, when you're 2 years old and that's what everybody around you calls him, that's what you call him, right?
Right.
But he passed away when my grandmother was 62, and she is now almost 91. She'll be 91 in April, as a matter of fact. And so seeing the challenges that she faced, seeing the challenges that my mom even continues to face as she's navigating retirement on her own. So that's really what inspired me to get involved. When you think about all the challenging decisions around Social Security and taxes and being on your own and not having that partner there on your side of the table to talk about challenges, to talk about goals, to talk about what life could look like in the future. That's really where I found my passion lied, and being that other resource, being that trusted advisor to walk alongside the women that we work with on their path to retirement.
Yeah. And so I'm sorry about the loss. I'm really excited about your grandma's birthday, though. I think that's fantastic. And I follow you on social media, so I've seen the family pictures. I could see her face.
Five generations. We have five generations. My granddaughter just turned 2 years old as a week ago as we're recording this. And so we actually have that picture. You may have seen it. I posted it here and there. 5 generations that we still have in our family. I'm so blessed.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And I do want to say, just in my personal thing, I've been through a divorce when I was young, in my mid 30s, later 30s, but I've also dealt with the loss of my second husband. So I know when you're talking about that sense of, there's no fallback. It's like you are it. And there's a lot of uncertainty, about what you can claim, what you can't claim, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. Because again, it's not like you've got a 2-income family or two 401k or two, retirement plan, right, or 2 Social Security families. So Eric, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind. Let's start with the Social Security thing, because I think, as we were talking before, that is a big concern for a lot of women, whether they're widowed, divorced, or single, and may have a claim for something, from a previous marriage, even if it was years and years and years ago. So I'm going to pick your brain. Just tell us what you think we should know about this.
I think it always starts with understanding your options. And I think especially with divorce, even if it happened many years ago, that's one of the things you got to be aware of, is you might still be eligible for different benefits based on a previous ex-spouse from 10, 15, 20 years ago. You might not want to think about this individual anymore, but if you're eligible for Social Security benefits based on that individual, it's important to know. I mean, it could cost you thousands of dollars if you don't. And so I think that's one of the things is just whether you've gone through divorce, you've been widowed, is just understanding your options. And Social Security is one of those areas that, it should be much more simple than it is.
Right.
But understanding the complexities and understanding strategies makes such a huge difference in your retirement income. Again, I always talk about Social Security gets such a bad rap, and maybe deservedly so. But the fact is that for most women, it is the sole source of lifetime guaranteed income that also goes up every year with inflation,
Right.
right? So when you think about having that guaranteed source of income, you want to get as much out of that system as you deserve and as you can.
So this is really interesting. Can you talk to us a little bit about, let's say you were married. Let's say you're like me, you're in your 60s and you were married in your 30s and divorced in your 30s. How, what would kind of be the criteria? And I know we're not talking about case specific. So we're not providing any financial or legal information about anybody's retirement options here. What kind of would be the criteria that I might want to look at whether or not I could get anything from that first relation or that first marriage?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So the big number to start with is 10 years. Did that marriage last at least 10 years? And 10 years to the day, not 10 years, not 9 years and 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, 10 years. If you are married to somebody for 10 years, you are potentially eligible for a benefit based on that ex-spouse's record. That's a key one.
Okay.
Now, then we can get into, depending on whether we want to talk about ex-spousal benefits or survivor benefits, those types of things. But I think that's a key one, even like survivor benefits. The fact that if I was married to that individual for 10 years, even though I divorced 20 years ago, depending on my current marital status, I might be eligible for survivor benefits based on that ex-spouse if they pass away.
Okay.
So I think it's, again, 10 years is a big one. 10 years is a big number to be aware of.
Okay. And so I'm just going to throw this out because I hear this all the time with my clients. If you were in a common law relationship for 5 years and then legally married for 5 years, does that count as 10 or is that only a 5-year marriage under the Social Security Administration?
So number one, anytime you're talking about common law, it's very dependent on the state that you reside.
Okay.
So actually, we know there's certain states that recognize common law marriage, certain states that don't.
That's true. Yes.
From the standpoint of looking at the easiest way I would go about that is if you're looking for true clarity, I would base it on the actual marriage years versus the common law years.
Okay.
Because again, you can look at the laws of your state and figure out, okay, does this potentially apply? Does it not? But I would always you're always going to be more certain based on those actual years of marriage.
Okay. And then
so in that case, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll just say, yeah. So that in that case, again, it would be that 10-year marriage, because what you're going to have to do is provide, if you're going to claim benefits, here's where this response comes in. If you're going to claim benefits, you're going to have to prove that marriage, in that you're going to have to provide a marriage certificate and divorce decree.
Okay.
And that's where that 10-year proof, that's where it becomes much more challenging if you're talking 5 years of common law versus 5 years of actual marriage. That's where the proof of becomes much more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Good thing to know. Now, the spousal benefits. Can you just touch? And I know there's a lot of different caveats on this one as well. But just kind of if you know that a past spouse has passed away or an ex-spouse has passed away, when may you be able to qualify for those benefits, or at least when should you seriously start looking into it?
So as long as that 10-year mark has been achieved, that's when we start looking at ages and individual circumstances. And you also have to consider whether or not you have or have not remarried. So number one is you're eligible for survivor benefits as early as age 60. That's number one. Now, if you happen to be disabled, it could be actually as early as age 50. But again, that's very individualized circumstances. So we'll go, for our purposes, we'll just talk about age 60. That's the earliest you could potentially claim survivor benefits. Now, for your own benefit or spousal benefits, it's 62. So that's a key differentiator there too, is just understanding that difference in terms of 60 for survivor, 62 for spousal, ex-spousal, and my own retirement benefit. Now, here's where the tricky part really comes in, right? So depending on your marriage status currently, if you get married, so if your ex-spouse, you divorced 10, 15, 20 years ago, as long as you don't get remarried before the age of 60, you could still be eligible for a survivor benefit based on that ex-spouse. Okay. So I divorced 20 years ago. I've never remarried, but I decide to get remarried and I'm 65. In that case, you're still eligible for a survivor benefit based on that ex-spouse from many years ago. And that's really where now, from a planning perspective, you hate to base marriage decisions on money, right?
Right, right.
But in that circumstance, if you've gone through that and you were married to a certain individual for at least 10 years, or maybe multiple individuals for 10 plus years, you got to at least factor that in because it could impact your future retirement income.
Yeah. Good to know. Good to know. Now, does your income influence that? Like, let's say you're making a lot of money and your spousal payments, survivor payments may, be a modest thing. Does your income factor into whether or not you can claim that, or is it strictly years of marriage and marital status?
In terms of always being understand when you're talking about Social Security, obviously eligibility is, you want to look at eligibility first. What am I eligible for? Who am I eligible for based on previous records, previous spouses? But then you really do have to start looking at age. What is my age when I decide to file for benefits? And so thinking there, several years ago was when we had the law change around when is full retirement age. Right. So for most people, 1960 is an important number. So if you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is going to be 67.
Right.
So if I start any benefit at all, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, my own retirement benefit, if I start any benefit at all prior to my age 67, if that's my full retirement age, it's going to be reduced. The earlier you start, the more the reduction. Okay. So I talked about earlier for survivor benefits, yes, you can start at 60, but just understand they were going to be significantly reduced from what the maximum benefit that you might be eligible for would be.
Okay.
And then we start getting into some of the other tricky parts of Social Security. And if I wanted to start at 62 or 63, or again, some age prior to my own full retirement age, am I still working? Mm. Because if that's the case, now we also have to worry about something called the earnings test. So what that's basically driving people to do is work until full retirement age, is work as long as possible before filing.
Gotcha.
But actually, we know life happens and there are circumstances where you might need to file early. But that's really the key. So we're talking about divorce specifically, just to try to be clear there. 10 years of marriage at a minimum, age 67 being your full retirement age. If you start any benefit early, it's going to be reduced from there.
Right.
And so that's really where that decision making and the individualized planning becomes so important.
And that's really where talking to somebody like yourself who can give you the big picture and help you understand, does it make sense to start taking it now if you're going to end up leaving thousands of dollars on the table over your lifetime? And how can you balance that? So, this is much more complex than just going in and saying, oh, well, I get this. And hey, I'd really like to have this extra, $1,000 a month or whatever in my bank account, because that might end up costing you an awful lot in the long run, right, is what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, yeah. And we know that, on average, women have spent more time out of the workforce for various reasons as well. Right. So even if they're currently working, may have a good income, they could have, depending on whether maybe they were stay-at-home mom in their early years while the children were young, they stayed at home to take care of the kids. Or is more and more common, and I'm sure you're aware of this as well, is caregiving in your later years.
Yes.
Taking care of parents or even taking care of the spouse. So right, there's any number of reasons why you may have less earnings years in your own personal work history than you might otherwise. Yeah. So that's where the planning comes in, is specifically around, again, survivor benefits. So you might have your own retirement benefit and may actually be pretty good. But if your husband or ex-husband has a longer work history, their benefit might be greater. And that's where that survivor benefit becomes so critical, is because if you're, let's say first you're married, if that spouse passes away, the smaller of the two benefits goes away.
Right.
You can keep the larger, but actually then that's dependent on how large is that benefit. So that's really, again, from the planning perspective, we always encourage, and we also know that, continue with the stats here, women on average live longer than men.
Yes.
They're going to be the one most impacted by the decision around when do we start Social Security, more than likely.
Right.
So when you get in that decision of, hey, let's go ahead and start at 62. May sound great at the time, but that could, again, significantly impact your future retirement benefits and survivor benefits.
Yeah, great information, Eric. So that's going to kind of roll over into the next question. Because yes, Social Security is one part of this, but there's,
Mhm.
you got tax planning, you got how do you manage your cash flow? What do you do with investments? How do you decide what investments are good options for you at different stages in life? I know the advice I always got was the older you get, the lower you should drop your risk down because you can't recover if something goes crashes or goes crazy in the stock markets or something. Talk a little bit, if you don't mind, Eric, about how you do what you do to help people kind of align all those things with their age, their goals, their financial, capacity, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, the way you described it, it sounds very much like a puzzle, right? So we've got all these different pieces. We've got Social Security, we've got taxes, we've got investments, we've got maybe in working, continue to work. There's so many more people that are continuing to work into the later years. How do we start fitting all these different pieces of that puzzle together? And taxes is such an important aspect of that and often overlooked because number one, it seems complex. It says, well, I can't do anything about this, so I'm just gonna pay the taxes. I'm gonna write the check.
Right.
But that's where the proactive component to this comes in and saying, well, what can I do? I talk about this with our clients a lot, saying, okay, what can we do this year that could actually impact your taxes for many years down the road? We want to reduce your lifetime tax liability. And the only way we can do that is to be proactive and looking every single year. What can we do this year? What can we do 5 years from now? What can we do 10 years from now that will have an impactful, a meaningful impact on your tax situation? Because ultimately it comes down to the less I can pay in taxes, reasonably so. We talk about, we're okay paying our fair share. We just don't want to give Uncle Sam a tip, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's okay to pay your fair share, but we don't want to overpay because again, the less we can pay in taxes, the more your money lasts, or the more your spendable income you actually get to keep, which becomes so much more important as you get into those later years.
Right.
Now, one of the things you brought up, and I want to touch on that as well, is thinking about, well, yeah, as the older I get, the more conservative I want to be. Not necessarily always the case.
Okay.
Because if you think about the realistic nature of retirement these days with longevity and healthcare, people living longer, if I retire in my early to mid 60s, I might have a 30 plus year retirement remaining.
That's true.
That is
Yeah.
still a long time frame.
Yeah.
And we think about the realistic nature of cost of living increases, or what I talk about is maintaining purchasing power over 30 years. Making sure that you're able to keep up with that is so important.
Right.
Because there's actually a presentation I do talking about, the 7 essential strategies to successful investing in retirement. And one of the reasons I talk about the importance of still having some component of stock allocation based on your risk tolerance and all those types of things is because if you think about just the historical inflation rate of about 3%, over 20 years, that means the things you're spending money on today are going to double. And if you're
Okay.
talking 30 years, it might be 2.5 times by then. So
Right.
that $5 box of Cheerios that you have for breakfast every morning might be $10 or $12 20 plus years from now.
Yeah.
So how do we keep up with that? And so one of the things that happens is if you think about, well, when I retire, I need to be conservative. I'm going to put all my money in CDs and savings accounts and bank accounts and safe stuff. Well, that can be just as bad, potentially, as being too aggressive. Being too conservative can be just as bad as being too aggressive because
Right.
you're losing purchasing power. If I'm only getting 2 or 3% on my money and inflation is 3%, I'm losing purchasing power.
Yeah. That
My
makes
money is no
sense.
longer worth what it was 20 years from now.
Right.
Even postage, that's my best, almost my best example of. So postage 20 years ago, 2006, was 39 cents. This year it's 78 cents. It doubled. Perfect replica of a doubling of prices over a 20-year period.
Right.
So how do I keep up with all these other things that are going to double over the next 20 plus years as well? And the best way of going about doing that is, again, making sure you have the right investment strategy for your circumstances. So if you got Social Security, making the right decisions around Social Security is always going to be one component of that. But immediately just saying, okay, because I'm retired, I've got to be extremely conservative. That might be just as negative as being too aggressive.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. And I think that's why so many people get so messed over in this is because they do listen to, some guru. And maybe, I mean, I remember my dad was big on investing and I was up in Canada then. And The goal was to invest in these RRSPs, registered retirement savings plans, which are kind of like an IRA thing. And I remember when I was a kid, it would double every 7 years. And that's why my dad was really, that doesn't happen anymore. there's no doubling every 7 years. So
it can. I mean, it actually can't. We can't guarantee returns, of course. So again, always take that with a grain of salt as far as what your expectations of the market will be. But given enough time, the market has historically been the best hedge against inflation.
Right. Okay.
Now, one of the questions I'll always get is, well, what happens if? What happens if we see a 25% decline in the market? Because we will. The last 3 years have been really good. 20 plus percent returns in a couple of years. Last year was a good year as well. But at some point, we know there's something on the horizon, and we don't know when it is or what it is. It's what's going to be the next crisis that's going to hit us.
Right.
But that's where I talk about preparation in advance of that crisis, not what do I do when they're right in the middle of it. And so we talk a lot about having our war chest in place before we get into that crisis versus, again, waiting till we're in the middle of it to think, well, what do we do now?
Right.
So we talk about having, depending on, again, your income needs, your risk tolerance, those types of things, somewhere around 5 to 7 years of income in what I would call your war chest. So more conservative stuff. Some amount of cash is going to be in there, short-term bonds, fixed income, things like that will help protect you, give you that comfort level when we do go into some difficult period where, hey, the market did go down. We don't want to sell stocks when they're down. So where do we get our income from? And that's where we talk about that war chest, having some amount of our retirement assets in that war chest. Because again, most of the time, stocks actually do go up, regardless of what you might hear on CNBC or whatever, Yahoo Finance or whatever you might be looking at. Because they're looking for clicks, right? They're not looking for buy and hold and hey, long term. That doesn't work that doesn't get clicks, right?
Right.
But it's there's new stock. There's this new stock you need to look at, and
right. or there's the catastrophe thing. All the stock markets are crashing, and then people respond, and then that only creates more of a crash, and it just it's a kind of a feeding frenzy sometimes, isn't it?
It's kind of that joke. The economists have predicted 15 of the last 5 economic downturns.
Exactly. Eric, I mean, there's so much we could go into, but I do want to ask you one specific question. We're almost out of time here. I can't believe how fast these conversations go. What about the idea of making sure that you have all your debts eliminated when you go into retirement, if you can? Is that still something that people should be focusing on, or is that less of a concern these days?
I think that's really got to be a very individualized circumstance because, I very much believe in the sleep at night philosophy, meaning if it helps you sleep better at night to have all your debts paid off, then that's probably a pretty reasonable goal. Because what you don't want to do is go into retirement when this is supposed to be your golden years and doing spending time with your grandchildren and taking trips, whatever it is that you wish to do, whatever that view of retirement looks like. Adding additional stress because I've got a credit card bill or I've got a car bill or I've got, even a mortgage, depending on the circumstances.
Right.
So always look at that first. If you look at it from, you don't want to make emotional decisions. I always talk about not making emotional decisions when it comes to money because it's almost always the wrong decision. But when we're talking about debt, can be a little bit trickier. You got to go a little beyond just the rules of thumb.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. No. So then it's more looking at from a financial perspective, what are my income sources? If I'm going to continue carrying a mortgage into retirement, do I have enough incomes from my other sources, my Social Security, my IRA distributions, my pension, if I happen to be lucky enough to be one of the individuals still with a pension, but do I have enough income sources to reasonably cover the mortgage payments plus the things that I need to do and the things that I want to do?
Yeah, great insight. And again, I'm going to say this, and I sound like a bit like a broken record, but this is why it's so important to talk to a professional, a certified financial planner like Eric, rather than just, guessing off the top of your head. Well, I think I'll put all my money into paying off my house and nothing in any kind of, war chest thing like you were talking about. So because the only way to access that funds in your house then is you have to sell. And then what are you going to do? So there's all these considerations. Eric, you have a couple of gifts that you've generously offered. I'm just going to ask you to just tell us about that briefly, and then I'm going to get your one takeaway you want everybody to remember from this conversation. But let's do your gifts first.
All right. Well, actually, we spent a good amount of time talking about Social Security. So one of the things I'm going to share with your audience is if you go to women's socialsecurityguide.com, that is what I call our ultimate guide to women's Social Security success. So it includes our top 6 PDFs that we share with our clients, with our audience. It includes a quick reference guide where you can see some of these percentages of, if I start early, how much could my benefit get reduced? If I am working and receiving Social Security, how much can I earn? So a lot of those key numbers, plus a lot of different eligibility guides that you can walk through to say, okay, if I was divorced, am I potentially eligible for benefits based on that ex-spouse? Or am I eligible for survivor benefits? So it walks you through some different eligibility guidelines that can be really, really valuable as you're doing your own planning, or even if you take it to your financial advisor to help them walk you through this. So that's number one. So again, women'ssocialsecurityguide.com. And then the second one, this is more of an all-encompassing retirement cheat sheet was what I call it. So the simplyretirementpodcast.com/retirement cheat sheet. Here you're going to see all the key numbers that you would want to be aware of for 2026. 401k contribution limits, IRA contribution limits, all these different pieces, some of the new estate tax rules, some of these new deductions. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk a lot about some of the new tax laws, but a lot of that's in there as well. So the new $6,000 age 65 plus deduction, am I eligible for that? Am I not eligible for that? So a lot of those key numbers that can really help you plan here in 2026.
Thanks, Eric. We may have to have you come back on and talk about that. Now, I also want to just highlight you have a podcast, the Simply Retirement Podcast. If you are in this area, so if you're 55 plus and you're going to be planning, I highly recommend you listen to Eric's podcast. I've started listening to it. He has phenomenal guests and great information about taxes and a lot of free gifts and things that you can grab. So make sure you grab the free gifts. Make sure you listen to Eric's podcast. Now, Eric, what is the takeaway you want everybody to remember from this conversation?
And so my key takeaway here, and I'm going to talk specifically to the women in the audience, and that would be part of the conversation. I had a situation recently where the lady reached out to us. She's in her 50s. She said, we've been married for 20 years. We're getting a divorce. He's had a financial advisor for the last 20 years. I have never had a conversation with this advisor. Number one, that's probably, I would probably throw that as malpractice on that advisor, but she finds herself in a very difficult situation now that she doesn't really know what's there. What are my options? What should I be asking for?
Right.
So that would be the biggest thing I could suggest is be part of the conversation. Ask questions, meet with that financial advisor, reach out to whoever, find those resources, whether it's my podcast or it's anybody else's podcast, books, be part of the conversation, educate yourself so you don't find yourself in a very difficult circumstance at some point down the road, whether it's divorced, widowed, whatever the case might be.
Yes. And sometimes even in divorce, you don't get access to the finances. And let's face it, if your spouse passes away and you don't know where the accounts are, there's an issue with that as well.
Absolutely.
Eric, if people want to reach out, if women want to reach out and work with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So actually, we talked about the simplyretirementpodcast.com. That's a great way to learn about us and what we do, but also blakewealthmanagement.com. That is our website where you can go. There's a lot of free resources on there. There's what we call our Simply Retirement Roadmap processes, which is our simple 3-step process for helping prospective clients make an educated decision about our firm. That's a great way to figure out whether, again, if you're looking for an advisor to help walk you with you along the retirement path, that's the best way we can share on how you might be able to determine if we are the right fit for you.
That's perfect. And I'm going to make sure the links for your podcast, for your gifts, and for your website are all in the show notes. So if you're driving or walking or doing whatever you're doing, don't worry. It's all going to be in the show notes. Eric, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a really eye-opening conversation on a really difficult topic for a lot of women to talk about. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to this episode of The D Shift. And don't forget to tune in for the next one. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analysis of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory or performance returns of any clients. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time and without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Blake's Wealth Management and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.